She had spent years proving her worth. Every project, every late night, every moment of silence she turned into strength. But on the day that was supposed to define her success, the room that once applauded her fell quiet. Whispers replaced praise, glances replaced trust, and the same people who once called her brilliant now questioned if she belonged there at all. What began as a meeting turned into something far more brutal. A reminder that for some, talent isn't enough when your skin speaks louder than your achievements. What happened in that boardroom would change everything. Before that meeting, before the whispers and the silence, she was the woman everyone admired. Alexis Carter had built her career from scratch. No connections, no shortcuts, just sheer grit. In an industry where few people looked like her, she rose through the ranks by outworking, outthinking, and outperforming everyone around her. Colleagues called her the engine of the company, the one who always delivered, the one who made the impossible happen. Her mornings began before dawn. Coffee, emails, strategy notes. Her world ran on discipline and quiet determination. Her success wasn't luck. It was survival. She knew that as a black woman in a corporate world still run by unspoken rules, she had to be twice as good just to be seen as equal. But that pressure had become her fuel. For years, she ignored the small things, the patronizing smiles, the compliments that sounded more like warnings, the way her ideas were praised only after someone else repeated them. She brushed it off, convincing herself that results would speak louder than bias ever could. And they did, until the day her success started to make people uncomfortable. The same confidence that once earned her respect began to draw resentment. The same voice they once encouraged, they now found too direct. Still, Alexis believed professionalism could protect her. She believed fairness existed somewhere beneath the politics and pride. But she was about to learn that for some, her talent wasn't the problem. It was her presence. Because the meeting she was walking into wasn't just about a promotion. It was about power. And in that boardroom, they were about to remind her exactly how far they thought she was allowed to go. The boardroom smelled of polished wood and power. 12 people sat around the table, executives, directors, and decision-makers. Alexis walked in with a calm confidence, her presentation in hand, her heart steady. She had been told this was the meeting that would decide her promotion, the position she had worked toward for 5 relentless years. But something felt off. The smiles were rehearsed, the tone colder than usual. Her manager, Thomas Reed, avoided her eyes, a detail she caught instantly. As the meeting began, she noticed how the language shifted. Every success she mentioned was met with a yes, but. Every solution she presented was twisted into a question of leadership style. They didn't question her results. They questioned her presence. One director leaned back and said casually, "You're ambitious, Alexis. But sometimes ambition can come across as aggression. We just want to make sure the team feels comfortable with your approach." Comfortable? The word echoed like a warning. She smiled politely, hiding the sting. She knew that word. It was the same word people used when they couldn't say what they really meant. Too confident, too assertive, too black. She tried to keep her composure, but each comment chipped away at her poise. They spoke about company culture, tone, and fit, the coded language of exclusion. Then Thomas, the same man who once praised her as the company's backbone, cleared his throat. "There have been concerns," he said. "Some feel your communication style can be intimidating." The silence that followed was deafening. Alexis sat perfectly still. She had led multi-million-dollar projects, trained half the room, and carried the company through its hardest year. And now, in one meeting, her leadership was being reduced to a personality flaw. But that wasn't the worst part. The next slide on the screen wasn't hers. It was her idea, presented by someone else. The same project she had created, now credited to another department head, a man who had once asked her for help understanding it. Her breath caught, but she said nothing. Speaking up now would only confirm their unspoken bias, that she was emotional, difficult, angry. She swallowed her pride and watched her work be stripped from her, piece by piece, in front of the very people who had once called her indispensable. The conversation shifted again, this time to her attitude. One woman on the panel smiled tightly and said, "You've done incredible work, but sometimes you come off as intense. Maybe it's just passion, but perception matters. Perception." Another word that didn't need translation. By now, Alexis felt the air closing in. Her hands trembled beneath the table, but her expression remained flawless. She'd been here before, in different rooms, under different faces, but this one cut deeper, because she had believed this company was different. When the meeting ended, Thomas walked her out, his voice soft and patronizing. "Don't take it personally," he said. "It's just business. Just business." She nodded, smiled, and left the room quietly. But inside, something was burning. That night, Alexis didn't sleep. She replayed every word, every microaggression disguised as professionalism. And as the city lights flickered outside her window, she made a decision. If the system was built to silence her, she would make sure her voice echoed louder than ever. The next morning, she walked into the office not as the woman they tried to humble, but as the one ready to fight back, with proof, with truth, and with the kind of strength they never expected her to have. Because they hadn't just underestimated her, they'd awakened her. And soon, the entire company would know it. The next day, the company announced a press release celebrating the innovation of the project that Alexis had created. Except her name was nowhere to be found. Her inbox filled with congratulations meant for someone else. The man who stole her work was being praised across the company's website, in emails, and even in a newsletter where Thomas himself called him a visionary leader. For a moment, Alexis just stared at the screen. Then her hands began to shake. It wasn't anger. It was the kind of disbelief that burns deeper, the feeling of watching your worth erased in real time. She went to HR first, thinking there had to be a mistake. But the meeting felt familiar. Polite smiles, distant eyes, a wall of rehearsed neutrality. "We'll look into it," they said. These things can be complicated. Complicated. Another word that meant nothing would be done. That night, Alexis sat in her apartment, surrounded by files, emails, and proof. Proof that the project, the work, every late-night draft and strategy came from her. She could stay quiet like so many before her, or she could burn the silence. The decision came easy. The following morning, she walked into the boardroom again, calm and composed, carrying a folder thicker than her fear. As the meeting began, she placed it on the table and spoke. Steady, clear, undeniable. Every slide, every email, every timestamp laid out, one after another, exposing the truth. The room fell silent. The same people who had once dismissed her now shifted in their seats, faces draining of color. The man who stole her work looked frozen, his confidence cracking under the weight of evidence. Thomas tried to interrupt, but Alexis didn't stop. She had been quiet long enough. When she finished, she closed the folder, looked around the room, and said softly, "You wanted proof. There it is." No one spoke. Not a single word. But in that silence, she won back everything they tried to take. And that moment changed everything. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. The evidence Alexis presented couldn't be ignored. The man who stole her work was quietly removed from his position. HR issued a public clarification, carefully worded, but clear enough for everyone to know the truth. The company tried to spin it as a misunderstanding, but the people who mattered saw it for what it was. Courage standing against corruption. But Alexis didn't celebrate. For her, this wasn't victory. It was exposure. The real problem wasn't one person's deceit. It was the system that allowed it. the silence that protected it, and the prejudice that tried to bury her talent under perception and comfort. Still, she walked taller. She knew that by speaking up, she hadn't just defended her name, she had cracked something open. Other women began reaching out quietly, sharing stories of being overlooked, dismissed, or replaced. Her act of defiance became their permission to stop shrinking. A few months later, Alexis resigned, not in defeat, but in power. She started her own consulting firm, one that prioritized inclusion and integrity over image. And when companies reached out asking for help fixing their diversity problem, she didn't lecture them. She showed them what leadership looked like. Her story spread far beyond the walls of that boardroom. It became a conversation, a reminder that sometimes strength isn't loud, it's steady. That the bravest thing a person can do is stand tall in a room built to make them small. Because Alexis's fight wasn't just about a stolen project. It was about reclaiming space, dignity, and truth in a world that still struggles to see them in the same frame. And maybe the real question isn't how she found her voice, but how many more will find theirs because she refused to stay silent. Don't miss more powerful real-life stories. Hit subscribe now.